The Life and Crimes of Carl Panzram, A Dark Journey into Evil. Carl Panzram was born on June 28, 1891, in East Grand Forks, Minnesota, into a family grappling with poverty. His parents, German immigrants, struggled to make ends meet, and Carl was the youngest of several siblings. His father abandoned the family when Carl was very young, leaving his mother, a stern and often abusive woman, to raise the children alone. Panzram's childhood was marked by neglect, emotional abuse, and an atmosphere of hostility. His mother often punished him severely for minor infractions, instilling in him a deep resentment toward authority figures and a profound sense of abandonment. The lack of love and care in his early life became a catalyst for the violence and hatred that would later define him. From a young age, Panzram exhibited troubling behaviors that hinted at the darkness within him. He struggled to form friendships and often spent time alone, developing a fascination with animals that only underscored his isolation. His upbringing was marred by poverty, and at a young age, he began to act out, stealing from neighbors and getting into trouble with the law. This early criminal activity marked the beginning of a long and tumultuous relationship with society and authority. When he was just 11 years old, Carl was arrested for theft and sent to the Minnesota State Training School for Boys, a reform school. Rather than providing the rehabilitation he needed, the institution became a place of horror for Panzram. The staff subjected him to brutal physical punishment, and he was frequently bullied by older boys. These experiences solidified his belief that the world was filled with evil and that he must fight back with violence. The trauma of his time in the training school deepened his rage and contempt for authority, setting the stage for a life of crime. Upon his release, Panzram returned to a life of crime, committing various thefts and vandalism as he wandered the streets. He quickly learned to survive on the fringes of society, traveling the country by freight trains and stealing what he could to survive. This life of petty crime only further alienated him from society, fostering a belief that he was at war with the world. His perspective shifted dramatically when he began to associate violence with power and control. By the time he reached his teenage years, he was already a hardened criminal, a pattern that would only intensify as he grew older. In 1907, seeking a fresh start, Panzram enlisted in the U.S. Army. However, this new chapter was short-lived. He struggled to adapt to military life and was soon arrested for larceny, which led to a court-martial and imprisonment. His military service only reinforced his hatred for authority figures. After serving time at Fort Leavenworth, Panzram was released but quickly reverted to a life of crime, unable to escape the cycle of violence and rebellion against the system. By the early 1920s, Panzram had adopted a new lifestyle marked by increased violence and a growing sense of invincibility. He purchased a yacht named the Malabar, using it as a means to lure unsuspecting victims. Panzram's modus operandi involved enticing men aboard his yacht under the guise of offering them work or adventure. Once isolated, he would ply them with alcohol, overpower them, and subject them to horrific acts of violence. This period marked the transformation of Panzram into a full-fledged serial killer. Panzram's first known murder occurred in 1921 when he killed a young sailor named Thomas. After luring him aboard his yacht, Panzram engaged in violent sexual acts before strangling him and disposing of his body overboard. This murder was just the beginning. He would later claim responsibility for at least 21 murders, with some estimates suggesting the actual number could be as high as 100. Each act of violence further emboldened him, and he began to relish the thrill of killing. The motivations behind Panzram's crimes were complex. He harbored deep-seated feelings of rage and vengeance against the world that had mistreated him. Panzram openly declared that he sought to exert power over his victims, viewing murder as an ultimate act of control. His confessions revealed a chilling enjoyment in the violence he inflicted, often detailing the gruesome manner in which he disposed of his victims. He described his acts with a disturbing sense of pride, reveling in the fear and helplessness he imposed on others. As he traveled across the United States, Panzram's criminal activities escalated. He became increasingly brazen, committing acts of violence in various cities. His life was a whirlwind of theft, assault, and murder, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. Each new city offered fresh opportunities for him to prey on vulnerable individuals, and he took full advantage, showing no regard for human life. The law seemed unable to catch up with him, and he continued his reign of terror unabated. Panzram's journey eventually took him to South America, where he found new victims and opportunities for violence. He continued to exploit and murder unsuspecting individuals, often using his charm to gain their trust before revealing his true nature. His time in South America only fueled his belief that he was untouchable and that he could operate outside the confines of the law. In 1928, Panzram returned to the United States, where his criminal exploits caught up with him. In Washington, D.C., he was arrested for burglary after a failed attempt to steal a car. It was during his time in custody that Panzram began to boast about his heinous crimes, shocking investigators with his confessions. His chilling recounting of murder and violence took law enforcement by surprise, revealing a man who felt no remorse for his actions. While in jail, Panzram was known for his confrontational and violent behavior. He openly admitted to the murders he had committed, demonstrating a shocking lack of empathy for his victims and their families. His brutal honesty and brazen attitude earned him the attention of the media, and he became somewhat of a celebrity among the public, as they were both fascinated and horrified by his story. Henry Lesser, a prison guard, developed an interest in Panzram's case and began corresponding with him. Through their exchanges, Lesser discovered that Panzram had a profound philosophy on life that revolved around violence and control. He believed that individuals were inherently evil and that the only way to reform humanity was through death. Lesser's interactions with Panzram revealed the depths of his depravity and provided insight into the mind of a serial killer. In 1930, Panzram stood trial for the murder of a prison worker named Robert D. Bob Hutton. His trial became a sensational event, drawing attention from across the nation. During the proceedings, he displayed a chilling indifference to the gravity of his crimes, openly challenging the court and refusing to show any remorse. His infamous outburst during the trial, demanding the execution to be carried out quickly, demonstrated his complete lack of fear or regret. On September 5, 1930, Carl Panzram was executed by hanging at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary. His final moments were marked by the same defiance that characterized his life. Panzram faced death without hesitation, using his last words to express disdain for humanity. "Hurry it up, you Hoosier bastard. I could kill a dozen men while you're screwing around." His execution did not bring closure to the families of his victims, nor did it erase the legacy of violence he left behind. Carl Panzram's life serves as a chilling reminder of the complexities of human nature and the societal failures that can give rise to such darkness. His brutal reign of terror left a profound impact on the families of his victims and the society that sought to understand the mind of such a killer. While Panzram's life ended in execution, the questions surrounding his actions linger, urging us to reflect on the conditions that lead individuals down such a violent path. Through the story of Carl Panzram, we confront the harsh realities of childhood trauma, mental illness, and societal neglect. His life serves as a chilling exploration of the nature of evil and the consequences of a society that often overlooks the roots of violent behavior. As we delve into this narrative, we are reminded of the importance of addressing mental health issues, childhood trauma, and the societal structures that can perpetuate cycles of violence. Panzram's legacy challenges us to confront the darker aspects of humanity and to seek solutions that foster compassion, understanding, and ultimately, change. In reflecting on Carl Panzram's life, we recognize the profound tragedy of a man who could have become a productive member of society, but instead succumbed to the darkness that engulfed him. His story raises critical questions about the societal and systemic failures that can lead to such heinous behavior. By studying the lives of individuals like Panzram, we can better understand the need for reform in mental health services, childhood welfare, and criminal justice systems. Carl Panzram's legacy, a blend of horror and tragedy, challenges us to remember the victims he left behind, the families shattered by his violence, and the importance of addressing the root causes of criminal behavior. In doing so, We strive to create a more compassionate world, one where understanding and support can replace violence and despair. As we conclude today's episode of Peaceful Stories, we hope that the narrative has offered you a moment of reflection and insight into the complexities of human experience. Each story we share is a window into the lives of individuals, reminding us of the resilience and fragility of the human spirit. If you enjoyed this tale and would like to hear more stories that touch the heart and stir the mind, please consider subscribing to Peaceful Stories. Your support helps us continue to bring you content that informs, inspires, and encourages deeper understanding. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. What resonated with you the most? We'd love to hear your reflections and any story suggestions you might have for future episodes. Thank you for joining us today. Until next time, may you find peace in the stories that surround you and the understanding that every narrative has a lesson to share. Stay safe and remember to embrace the beauty in life's intricate tapestry.